Okay, so hi everybody and welcome. My name is Kelly Pike and I'm chairing this session. I'm part of the Decent Work Regulation in Africa project, which a number of members in this meeting are involved with. We have the project lead, Professor Deirdre McCann from Durham University Law School in the UK, and also Karina, who's involved with the project, also at Durham University. We have Darren Hutchinson, our filmmaker with Dreamscope production. And we have two project members from Lesotho, Rethabile Ratsi, who is the narrator of this story, and Nthabeleng Molise, who used to be working with Better Work Lesotho and is now leading the RemMoho Compliance Solutions, which is a compliance program, private compliance program in Maseru. So I'm going to introduce Professor McCann to talk a bit about the project and the rationale for the film. And then I think she's going to kick it over to Darren to talk a little bit about what he wanted to do with the film and his approach. We'll play the film and then have time for questions and answers and some feedback from our colleagues on the ground in Lesotho. So Deirdre.
Thank you, Kelly, and thank you for organising the session, and also to ILERA for giving us this opportunity to show the film and to have a discussion about it. Just briefly to introduce our project. So the film is part of a broader project, as Kelly said, that I lead from the University of Durham in the UK. And our focus in that project is, over the last 5 years or so, is about the crucial significance of labour regulation, and in particular very effective labour regulation in achieving sustainable development, and in particular towards Sustainable Development Goal number 8, which, as we know, is towards decent work and economic growth. So that project is a response to what we think of as global challenges to effective labour regulation. So challenges that are shared in countries of the global north and south, even if they emerge in different forms in countries in different settings in different countries. So our response to these set of global challenges has been to bring together researchers from a range of disciplines who are interested in labour regulation, but not necessarily centred in law departments, and also to stakeholders and policy makers from countries in different regions across the world. And our hope has been to consider these globally shared problems and perhaps even to find some novel solutions through this process of interregional and interdisciplinary dialogue. So the film that we're going to see, called Rethabile Story, is part of a project that we conducted, and many of the members of the team are here in this session, in 2018 and 2019 in Southern Africa, in South Africa, and also in Lesotho. And the particular challenge to effective regulation that we were looking at there was the forceful or robust enforcement of labour standards, whether they be public or private. And that was a collaboration between the University of Durham, where I am, the University of Cape Town, and in particular the Institute of Development and Labour Law, and also through Kelly York University in Toronto. Our particular focus was the garment sector, and so we also involved in the project a range of stakeholders from the sector, so employers associations, government departments, trade unions, one of the buyers, the International Labour Organization. That project was funded by two UK bodies, the Global Challenges Research Fund and the Economic and Social Research Council, and we're very grateful to both of them for funding the project and making it possible. So Rethabile Story, as I said, is a short film. So why then have a film as part of a research project? And I think we opted for a film at an early stage because we wanted to convey, in a very immediate way, some of the findings of our research and the direct personal experience of workers in the garment sector in Lesotho, in Maseru, but also in Cape Town. And we wanted to really hear their voices of the workers themselves and get their perspectives and experience and objectives and priorities, and also to make that research available to as wide an audience as possible, so perhaps to groups beyond the conventional academic audiences. So we had the good fortune to collaborate with Darren Hutchinson and also to have Rethabile on our team and to be the narrator in the film. So thank you again and for the opportunity to introduce the film, and I'm going to hand over to Darren, who I think is going to say a little more about how it was made.
Thank you very much, Deirdre. Yeah, it was an absolute pleasure to be invited to put this together. It's one of these jobs that that comes along very few and far between, and they're absolutely fascinating when they do come. Our challenge was to land in Lesotho and understand what was going on in, I think, about 3 or 4 days, capture everything that we needed, and then move on to Cape Town in South Africa and do the same there. The team here, Kelly, Deirdre, a few other people out in Nthabeleng, and obviously thanks to Rethabile as well for being there pretty much every single minute in Lesotho. Our challenge was to get this story, a real story that wasn't led by any preconceived ideas by a director, which sometimes happens. I went there and I had no real idea what we were going to find out, but the plan was to give an absolutely truthful and honest representation of what happened. There were things that we would have liked to have done. We would have liked to have had a little bit more representation from political figures, from people, from factory owners, etc. But we just couldn't get access in that time. So what we did manage to do was to speak to the people on the ground in Lesotho and in Cape Town and understand exactly what life is like for them on a day-to-day basis, and really get into the problems and get into hopefully the potential solutions that may come about, things that the wider global audience could maybe contribute to. The reason why I wanted to just do a little bit of an introduction today was to get that across, the fact that everything that you saw that you will see in this film, should I say, has not come from any particular skew or ideal of my own. It has come exactly from the people on the ground, the people that wanted to tell their stories. We did it the hard way. We did it the way where we captured everything we possibly could, and then looked at it and thought, how do we set this out so that it comes across exactly as it should do? And I believe that we've done that, and I hope that people watching that today will enjoy it and will understand more about the problems on the ground, and hopefully we can all go some way to making a difference. And I'll leave it there, and I'll just say I hope you enjoy the film. Thank you very much for being along for the ride. Thanks,
Darren. So I'm going to share my screen and play the film from my laptop. It's called Rethabile's story because Rethabile represents, I think, in some way, workers in the industry. She used to be a factory worker herself at a denim factory, which supplied materials for Levi's, among other places. And then I first met Rethabile in May 2011 when I was doing some research there. She was in the first focus group that I ever conducted. You were a worker at the time, but soon after that you were unfairly dismissed, weren't you, Rethabile? And then you got involved with the union. So you've been a union organizer for many years after that, trying to advocate on behalf of your friends. And you have a firsthand insight and account of what goes on inside the factories, and then how that translates into home life as well. So you were a great person to tell this story. And without further ado, I shall play the film.
My name is Rethabile Ratsi, and this is my home. This is Lesotho. So long time back, I used to work at the factories. So these are the factory that I used to work just behind us. I want to tell you stories of my friends, good people who are still working in the factories. I was hired January 2006. The conditions wasn't good at all. Everything was bad, even the management. They didn't know the laws, even us as workers, we didn't know our rights. I left the factories in 2010 and conditions aren't getting any better. The clothing industry in Lesotho is almost entirely foreign owned, more than half by Taiwanese and Chinese investors. It employs around 40,000 workers. Over 80% of them are female. And more than half of the Lesotho population lives below the poverty line, even though the value of our government export has risen to more than $400 million.
Actually, my mother was so hangishly hammered. Ha holo ho tloa ho management. Ha o mamele dilo tsa basebetsi ho hang ha o re se ke le tsebe dilo tsa rona.
We don't have heaters. The way we are treated is not good. We are working with different people. Those who don't understand our culture.
It's not okay for management to be following us around. They are following us around like we are animals. They'll be like, make it quick, make it quick. While on the other side, they give us a little money.
Hi, re bomme ba malapa. O sile bana hae. Ho tla botho ska arabela cell phone ka mosebetsing. Ntho eno it's obvious e fana ka bothata ho hae. Haebe ke tla fuma ngwana ka hana le bothata sekolong. Bothata bo ba hae ke tla lo botseba mantsibua ha ke chaisa hobane jwale ke sa dumelle ho arabela cell phone ka mosebetsing.
I feel as if we are trapped because we don't have another options.
One of the main issues is that the management don't understand the working people of Lesotho. And it appears some factories have little interest in their well-being.
The challenge re di fumanang ke tsa hore re fumana kgethollo e matla. Re na le bokamedi bo nang le kgethollo le ma-China a fuwe matla a maholo a hore a etse dintho ho latela bona not molao ha ba etse ka molao.
Our project team in Lesotho, including our filmmaker Darren Hutchinson, tried to get access to the factories. But unfortunately, the owners wouldn't allow them into the ground, except for a journey in a factory compliance manager's car.
We're all trapped in a car. Well, the factory manager's cars.
The compliance managers.
They're going to see us.
Yes.
The money that we earn is very little. And there's so much sickness, which we need to go to the doctors every month for the checkups. Then to go to doctors, we have to use transport. We are paying rent, taking children to school, giving back our mothers at home for food.
Haholo jwalo ka motho a seng a sebetsa a le mong. Ke ne ke lebeletse hore mohlomong mosebetsing wa ka nakong e re nyollelwang meputso. Ho ka etsuwa hore re fumane meputso e phedisang bana ba rona empa ha re fumane ntho e jwalo. Ha ke sana yena.
My mom is working at the factory. She's a single parent. And she has been single from 2006. She doesn't have anyone to help. Here we pay 400 malut every month, and my mom earns only 1.5.
And do you both sleep in that bed?
Yes.
Together?
One of the hardest things for any parent is being apart from their children. And when your family home is miles away in the country, it is impossible to see them on a daily basis and travel to the factory. This factory worker hasn't seen her children for nearly 6 months. So the pain and torture of missing your children is more than any parent in any country should have to endure.
It's real sad because you miss a lot of your children. Sometimes you miss their birthdays, you miss a lot to celebrate with them. And every parents love every moment to be with to their children. We don't save a lot because every month they have to send money to them. Like now it's winter, every kids need warm clothes.
In winter, although it is up to 20 degrees Celsius during the day, at night everything freezes. When we opened the crew car first thing in the morning, the whole windscreen and the car itself was frozen over. People of Lesotho, heating is a luxury they cannot afford, and for most, even transport is out of the question. Some workers are forced to walk up to 20 kilometers to and from work each day.
I want to check kana go di firma ya jena ke shwala ne ka re a sebetsa fela at the end of month ha ona tšhelete re fumana ha hona le tho di salary tsa rona ka nnete di re pitlibisa re isa bana dikolong re a palama re a ja odima yona ha o gola 1.4 kapa 1.2 o godisa bana jwa modima tšhelete jwalo.
The sacrifices that workers have to do to make that money work. Some people don't take their children to school. We have to borrow money to the lenders. It has so much interest, which is 30%. As well as working to pay off the loan sharks, we are working at the risk of our own health. Some of this machinery is unsafe, and the equipment that we are given does not protect us from it.
Re sebedisa dintho tse kotsi jwalo ka metšhini e kenywang dithipa. Dikotsi di etsahala haholo ka mo re sebetsang ha batho ba lemetse ka moo motho wa nkuwa ho thoka dingwa tšhelete ke company o iswa ngakeng o fihla a siuwe fela mono a fuwe tšhelete ya o kena ngakeng fela.
Lemong tse pedi tse fetileng ho kile a ba le mosebetsi ya kileng a kgaoha letsoho ke ona metšhini eno ya ka mono, mme bookamedi ha bo ka ba sekehela tsebe temalo eno ya motho eno.
We managed to track down that man so that he could tell his story.
Hana ka kgwedi ya bobedi ka 2011 ka di 26 ke nentse ke sebetsana le taba le sela ya ba motšhini wa ntshwara ka morago go motšhini wa ntshwara ke la ka nka nako go lokollwa mo empa ka gola ka morago nako ke la ka lokollwa ka be ke tsamaya sepetlele yeo e ke di sepetlele a gola motšhini o ntshwere boka le boka past 3 nako motšhini o ntshwara empa ka gola ke lokolotswe mono batho ba ne sentse ba tšhaisa tšhelane sa isheba nako fela batho ba ne sentse ba tšhaisa letsoho leno la ka le la salla ka motšhining ka mono di le seleng setse morago ke ya sepetlele.
Big accidents do happen, but the real issue is the lack of provision for daily health. We are breathing in dust and fibers every day, and because of that, we regularly get diseases.
Ke re sireletsa tjena hore re patele hore re ipatele hore le go le ha ke ntse tje le kena le hana mo
qetellong ya letsatsi o qetelletse o kula ke maemo ano ka mono, mme ha o so kula company se nka o se letho e kana ile o tebela ya o tebela mosebetsi ntle hobane o so kula.
TB is common. For example, one of our friends was diagnosed just 2 weeks ago, and she allowed us to film with her.
We just made some small talk That will be fine because
Okay.
she says she's tired. She needs to rest.
Are you getting any doctors? Has anybody coming to see you?
Oh, una motho a tlang a tlo bona doctor. Ka bona kwana tla mekiseng again. No, there's no doctor who needs to come here. She has to go to see the doctor.
So they won't come visit?
No, she
Okay.
has to go to see the doctor.
And I suppose that's probably impossible at the moment.
Yes, it is. She's on sick leave
Without pay?
without pay, yes. 2 weeks.
2 weeks without pay.
Sick leave, yes.
Do people care about health and safety?
No, each and every day we got workers who get injured in every department.
What would happen if somebody got injured?
They will take you to the hospital and drop you there. And they brought you 50 rand. And you have to pay that 50 rand back.
And are you expected to come back into work straight afterwards?
Yes.
So what happens if you can't work?
They will tell you have to resign.
The only hope for Lesotho is for all the stakeholders to work together. The unions, the Minister of Labour, the Labour Commissioner, the employers, and the buyers. We visited some representatives from the garment workers' unions.
We are trying our level best to see that there is a good relationships between the workers and the employers.
All private sector workers in Lesotho are living below poverty data. Therefore, this year we are expecting the government to increase the minimum wage by 15% for other sectors and 2,000 maloti for the textile workers.
The main mandate for the union is to make collective bargainings and to see that the rights of the workers are observed at the workplace. That's the main call here, to represent workers legally on the issues concerning them. Our strategy is to organize workers collectively and make legal strikes where we have the majority.
We were invited to one of the rallies protesting against working conditions in one particular factory, one of many rallies that happens throughout the year.
The procession on Sunday will be petitioning our Minister of Labour.
Long live the working class! Long live!
We are expecting between 1,000 and 2,000 workers on Sunday. This is the second petition. We petitioned the ministry through the Minister of Labour. And we are expecting him to give us a positive answer. If we don't hear anything after 2 weeks, then we'll sit down with our constituency workers and say which is our way forward.
Do you think it'll work?
I don't know, but we'll try. Communication is always good.
At the conclusion of the protest, we handed our grievance to the Ministry of Labour. All we can do now is wait and hope. Rallies like this are essential and victory for the workers and the unions.
But we don't want to fight. We want a happy life where our working conditions and our pay give us the lifestyle we deserve. We have hopes and dreams just like everyone else.
Ke a kgola bophelo bo motho o ka bo hlokang ka mono bakeng sa bokamoso ba bana ba rona ke ba bana ba ka ke ha re ka bona re salary ya rona e batla e akaretsa ditlhoko tsa malapa a rona.
Ke gola motho ntho o e lebelletseng ha o sebetsa ke taba ya hore o batla ho ba le ntlo e kgolo o ba le koloi le bana ba hao ba kgona ho kena sekolo ba university.
Ha tjhelete ne le ntle ne ke tlo reka koloi ya hanto bana ba ka ba ya sekolong.
Is it realistic to have such dreams? Is my country heading for better times?
I don't think there'll be any solution because politics have taken over and only people who are high will only get that opportunity to study. Like tomorrow there'll be a party in stadium for our Prime Minister and he's gonna give lots and lots of money to people who already have money, whereas us here, we are suffering.
Economies in the region is declining, and we are very worried what's going to happen in the next 5-10 years.
The government doesn't take the workers as the potential people.
We want to teach people, the workers, the way young workers, about their rights. And that unity strength, that without unity, there's nothing they can do.
This problem is not isolated only to Lesotho. It is happening in many countries across the world. In Cape Town, they have their own problems. We visited factories there so that we could understand the problems the workers were facing and the challenges they had in South Africa.
We are fighting for wages for our workers. Do they care how we come to work and not even want to give us that extra money? I mean, the petrol go up, food go up, you have to pay your children, maybe your grandchildren's school fees, where's the single mothers? So why must we struggle for wages where they're not doing us a favor, we must work for our money. I mean, every year we must struggle for extra wage. Now they talk about the minimum wage. That minimum wage is so little.
I wouldn't like my children to work in a factory. I would like for them to study further, to become something in life. We as factory workers earn most little.
To me, as a worker, I don't know what rights I have. You say you have that right, if you come step forward, then you pay consequences regarding it. Sometimes there's no unity, and sometimes there is unity. Sometimes managers don't want to listen to the workers, but you're going further and take it to your boss, then they will make time to listen. Sometimes people is too scared to speak out.
Work out here is so scarce for the children out of matric, where they must go find work. There's not even a job for our children here in Cape Town, here in the Western Cape. Because you must have the education, you must have money to go to university, after post-matric, where must I go? Come work in a factory. When will the world come to think that we are hard-working people that want to earn enough money to provide for our children, or maybe our children's children? Because there's no work for them out there.
How can we solve these problems? It's not easy, but it is essential that workers have a decent lives here in Lesotho and around the world. I am part of the project on decent work regulation. It is led from the University of Durham in the UK. It responds to the Sustainable Development Goals. We believe that to solve these problems, we need to bring lots of different people together. The UN, governments, trade unions, employers, and workers themselves. It's important that local people are heard. Decent work regulation. Let us share our experience and ideas. I went to Durham to talk about Lesotho. It was my first time in Europe. Everything was very different from home. We also had a workshop in Cape Town. We agreed that to solve our problems, we all need to work together.
We are interested in how labour standards can be more effectively enforced, and our focus is on the garment sector here in Africa, which is a crucial sector for development in the region, but also often a host to rather poor working conditions.
The workshop agreed on the most important challenges in the garment industry and some ideas on how they can be solved through collaboration among all the stakeholders.
One thing that I think was really good about this workshop was the chance for people from different countries, representing government, business, labor, to all get together in the same room. That doesn't happen very often.
There is no way we can make gains on poverty reduction if the work that is provided is not based on decent work principles.
Communication is the key, and by that I mean internal communication. There's been a lot of talk about the various stakeholders, the ministry and regulation, but I think that the workers' voice needs to be empowered and to be engaged with.
People are losing their jobs every day. Companies are closing, the retailers, are giving our manufacturing sector very low prices, It's like pressing down on something that's already going down. And we're trying to, push back.
I think it's the whole system and framework that we need to be addressing. And the problem is that a lot of us are specialized in one component and we're not speaking to each other.
If we were all to respect that workers have the right to organize, respect that workers have a right to collective bargaining, and I think that is where we should start. And if that can be adhered to, then half of our job will be done.
As an ILO official, one of the things that I will advocate for is the new initiatives that are taking place, whereby there is a cross-border collaboration between member states to ensure that the compliance is taking place.
This is a supply chain. We cannot buy a t-shirt without knowing where the t-shirt comes from. You should know the t-shirt have been it's produced a clean cloth campaign. So we have to make it very clear to the world that even though you are buying from Lesotho, this is what Lesotho is doing to the workers. The workers are not suffering. The workers are dying. So if the world should come to the workers' rescue, I think we can go somewhere, because they will boycott the clothes until the workers are here.
By working globally, the brands can help us here in Lesotho. We have some companies which are at other countries. These companies that are here home, their working conditions there are good. Even the money they earn are good. So I think if the brand can do that even in our country, the working conditions, even the money can be good, and workers can enjoy their work.
see if anybody in the audience has any questions based on the film. And if not, we can turn to some of our colleagues in Lesotho. But first, are there any questions or comments that people want to put out there?
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead, Karina.
Yeah, so my question is, from the work of the ILO and this project, what did you notice was the biggest achievement as a result of the project? Like, was there improvement in the conditions or communication?
So there were a couple of action items that resulted from this project, primarily involved with engaging the trade unions in the sector with each other and trying to build more of a relationship with the National University of Lesotho, thinking about how that might help to develop local capacity. And I think that participants in that enjoyed it. And there's a bit more information on the website on decent work regulation in Africa about what exactly took place. But I also know that Nthabeleng has recently been talking with some of those union leaders to ask precisely this question about, you know, what was gained from that, what stuck, and what may have, what might still need more work moving forward or more attention moving forward. So why don't I give it over to Nthabeleng to talk about your impressions from people you've talked to about the benefits of both the experience of this project in Lesotho and then also the aftermath, like what has benefited them in the long run.
Okay, so yes, I've recently been talking to some of the unions that were part of the project. So most of them, I think they still feel that there still needs some more work to be done. So they believe that they were very happy with the goals of the project, like all that we discussed, what we intended to do to bring all the stakeholders together and make sure that when we tackle the problems, we tackle them with everybody on board, all represented. But they feel it's as if we stopped, we didn't quite really continue and finish what we intended to do. So they're still expecting more out of the project. That's the impression that I got. So they still think that, yes, there still has to be some more work, especially in terms of bringing in everyone together, like all the stakeholders together to tackle the problem. Not make it an issue of the compliance organization, an issue of the union, an issue of the government, an issue of academia. Everybody should be on board and we come up with what will work for them. I think that's basically what I picked out from my discussions with them. Yes.
Nthabeleng, do you think that they think it's the right approach and there just needs to be more of it? Or do you think we're maybe missing something and should have been doing something a bit differently? Do you get a sense from your conversations with them?
No, I think they were really very happy. They think that's the direction that this thing really has to go. Like everybody has to be on board. But it's as if we've just stopped when we were just at the middle of getting it done. Yes.
Deirdre, do you want to comment at all on the project level in terms of what the capacity of the project and goals and where we left off with it? Anything you want to add?
Yeah, so I think the challenges in there working in the context of Lesotho, in which there has been fairly strong political instability over the past year or so that intensified. So I think that certainly we had felt in those circumstances that a particular focus would be in working together with the trade unions, which is, after the work that you've seen in the film, was the direction that we took. and trying to, over the years perhaps, and maybe Kelly would say more on this, but the unions have been perhaps a little bit fragmented, and our focus has been to bring them together at the national level, to develop ideas around capacity building, and to work with the university in Lesotho to think about how we can host that work and drive it forward. And I suppose I certainly think now, as with the garment sector across the globe, we're really in an unprecedented situation with the pandemic, and obviously the repercussions of that. So I suppose I was also interested in hearing from your talk with the partners and with the unions about their experience and where they feel they can really pick up and move forward after these very forceful challenges.
Yeah, that's a thing, that area that we're all going to want to hear more about. But I've got a private message here from Darren that he has to take off because of childcare juggling. So we're going to kick it over to him to make any comments you want, and then we can continue.
There's a lot of screaming in the background, and unfortunately my wife's had to go out to a meeting, so I've just pacified them for a few seconds. But I just wanted to say, if anybody had any questions specifically for me, then please ask them now. I'll happily answer anything. I've probably got about 5 minutes of them before the issues start up again. But the joys of homeschooling permanently, obviously, is great. But if anybody had anything that they would like to ask us, perfectly fine if you don't, but if you'd like to, then I'm here. And
I have one more question.
Perfect.
Yeah, both to Derek and Kelly and maybe Deirdre. Rethabile, she was talking about brands, you know, the impact that the big world-known brands can possibly make by influencing buyers. Do you know, or do you like conceive of any research projects or like filmmaking projects about possibly which brands worldwide would be interested in pushing through those, you know, sustainable and decent work conditions and sort of advertising that to buyers? Is there any work done in that regard with that group?
I'm going to answer a tiny bit of that because that's not really my area of expertise. But the one thing that I do know about it is that the brands that I've dealt with over my sort of 20 years of doing this are very reluctant to do anything unless it is heavily managed, because they're very scared of what their image looks like. And I'm not talking about this particular project because I haven't worked with a brand on a project like this, but I've worked with brands on similar issues, and generally they tend to go towards the side of not doing anything rather than putting themselves out there. But as I said, that's not connected to this project. That's my experience as a filmmaker with these things. I'll hand that over to people who might be able to answer it a little better than I can.
Just still on the filmmaker side though, Daniela, you had a question. Was it directed for our filmmaker, or is it a more general question?
I'm not sure. So like in the film, I noticed that they talked about the Minister of Labor, and kind of I got the impression there is a corruption there. So if they have money, they'll be given to their relatives or friends, to people that already have money, but not to the workers that need more. And so I'm wondering that, you know, how sometimes if it gets to the news, the ministers become a little more concerned, or when there's strikes, like, I mean, the minister came there, signed something. Was there any effect? And do ministers, politicians there, do they care when something gets to the public? I'm wondering that, because like if it gets like this film, if it gets to be known, like many people to hear about it, about these conditions, is that going to help? Does it help? I mean, do these politicians care?
Well, after that question, I'm going to say thank you very much. I'm going to head off because I think things are going to get loud here, because I certainly can't answer that one. But I saw Nthabeleng have a few facial expressions that she might want to go into describing.
Thanks, Darren. We're happy you were here.
And thank you so much, and I hope you all enjoyed the film. All right.
Thank you.
Care, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Yeah, Nthabeleng or Rethabile, did you want to comment on that in a local context? Would they care if they saw a film like this? Would anything change?
It's very difficult to answer that one, Kelly, because I think if really our politicians, if they really did care, projects like Better Work or similar projects like those, they will still be existent here in Lesotho. I think they would have done whatever it took for them to keep such a project, because everybody, honestly, it was so beneficial to the workers. So if they really did care, I think they would have done something to such to projects like those. I'm not sure also whether it's about caring, or I really don't know. Maybe it's not something that is, it's not something that is very specific to what they are about. It's very difficult. It's very difficult, but I honestly, I would just say that if they really felt that, because this is not something new, it won't be, if it comes to their eyes, if it has not already, it won't be something new. They hear about this every day. They hear about this every day. They hear about what the workers the conditions that they would like to have in their workplaces, how the government, how the politicians can play a role every day. But no, still not. So one of the reasons, I think, that which were explained to us during the time of Better Work, why it had to leave, was that there's no commitment from the government of Lesotho. There's no commitment from the ministry responsible, the government. So if this program was running from donor money from another country, people are paying their taxes there from that country, and the project was only asking for Lesotho to pay for a certain percentage of that money to make sure that things can continue. Not even the whole amount, but they couldn't. So I don't know. I don't know.
Go ahead, Daniela.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, like, I'm from Macedonia, right? We had at some point similar situation. I mean, the unemployment rate was, even in the textbooks, like, it was considered something about 33%, which is very high. And yeah, the government seemed to not care in our country. They kind of knew about the situation, but everybody was just trying to blame someone else. Eventually, the situation is getting better, but it just seemed to be, again, not so much from the government as much as like investments coming, more and more investments from the West. And so that kind of takes, it creates a little bit competition for like the better conditions they create, the more likely to get better employees. And so the ones that were not doing good, like for example, paying to the employees very low, or giving them very bad conditions, and like kind of claiming that they are giving them benefits when they didn't, including pensions and health benefits, asking employees to sign that they have taken vacation when they didn't, in order to keep their job. Like, they will tell to the employee, you need to sign that you took this 3 weeks vacation for the year, but they didn't actually, and the employees will just do it. So like, the media seemed to have some influence eventually. Again, the media was scared, like, you can lose your job if you go against certain politicians. So things are getting a little better, but I'm just kind of wondering, if the media creates noise about it, like, what's going on.
Danielle, there have actually, that's a good point. And I think there have been some media campaigns in Lesotho. Like, there was this bit on ABC News some time back where they were showing like bright green stuff in the water that was coming from chemicals being used at 2 of the factories, and it was like Gap and Levi's. And so they responded and they did something about it. But then 2 weeks later, so it's all like short-term fixes. Look, we're paying attention. So that is one thing that could potentially stir some response, usually from the buyers who are worried about their reputation. But part of this whole like research area, I guess, is thinking about what's a sustainable approach? How can we best try to close all those gaps, reduce that deficit? Better Work was one attempt at doing that multi-stakeholder approach. This project was one way of coming in after Better Work to say, look, it kind of missed something on really developing capacity so that those partners continue to work together when there's not someone like overarching authority, right? But now we're hearing, okay, well, there's still, and of course that's not necessarily just the fault of the project. There's some things that are happening in that country that are like political dynamics, economic, and now with this pandemic. So maybe we can hear from Rethabile a little bit. I don't know if you've been talking with any people who are working in the industry or just your own observations. Like, what is it like now? Do you notice a difference now in the context of the pandemic? I mean, that's just must be turning everything upside down. I'll unmute you here. Wait, no, that didn't. I think you have to unmute yourself, Rethabile. Okay, go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, it's very bad now, very, very bad, because some of my friends are not working. And this is, the government said they will give them money, 800 per month since this COVID-19, but it's not working. They gave them 1 month. These all months they are not working, so it's very bad. Yes.
Yeah, we saw in the film how it was already hard enough to be making ends meet. So now they're not working at all. The government has said, give you 800 Rand, which is like, I don't know, $80 a month. They did that for the first month, but now workers are still waiting for April, for May. And how do you make ends meet with nothing coming in? And Nthabeleng, you also heard a bit about you know a little bit about factory closures or stoppages, or like, did you get any sense of where things are at in the industry? Any roadblocks there?
Yes. So yeah. So there have been even a protest. I think on last week or the other week on 12 June. So they were protesting against that payment that they were promised by the government, the 800. So just like Rethabile said, they were only given for 1 month, yet they were promised 3 months. So they were protesting and asking when will they get the remaining 2 months salaries, the 800 malut that they were promised. So
and we know a couple of factories have shut down too, right?
Yes,
at
it's
least
really
one or
very
two.
bad. It's very bad because there are a few. I think I had a few in Maputo have already closed down. There is one that is planning to close as well, and there are also a few that are planning to retrench a lot of workers. One is even planning to retrench almost half. This factory was employing about 3,000 workers, so they are thinking of retrenching 1,000 plus of their employees. So it's really very bad. People are scared now of losing their jobs. It's difficult. There is the pandemic. It's difficult, honestly, for the factory workers at the moment.
Yeah, and you said in your current role as a compliance officer, you've been in some of the factories and you've seen that they're not really adhering to the social distancing requirements. And you also spoke to unions about what their strategy is in this context. Like, what do you do now, given all this? So maybe you can comment a bit about that.
Yes, so yes, the social distancing is a challenge, honestly, because they are used to being together. The factories are small, they cannot be able to accommodate everybody being 2 meters away from each other. So it's very difficult for them to adhere to the social distancing thing. Especially during lunch hour when they have to go sit and eat their lunch. During the workplace, the working hours, because the workstations are already designed in such a manner that there's that distance between them, it's not that difficult. But during lunch hours, they sit all together every time and there's nobody who is monitoring that. Some, they decide to go outside because now the eating areas are also very small in the factories. So they can't they can't all fit. So when they go and sit wherever they are sitting, they will be sitting together with their friends. It's not happening. There's no social distancing at all. So yes, so as I was talking to some of the unions, they were saying that what they will do, because they've tried to talk to the factory managers, to the government, to ensure that they abide by the COVID-19 regulations. The Ministry of Labor also has even released some regulations for the managers to adhere to, like some guidance that they have sent to all of the factories, but still it's very difficult for them to do that. So they are planning even to get some more legal strikes until the government can actually make sure that the factories are complying with what has to be done. So there are a lot of safety issues at the moment. There were still more even before, but now they have escalated. They have escalated. Even the mere soap, like employees having, because one of the recommendations was that at least people should keep washing their hands, like maybe every 20 minutes or so, or even 30 minutes if you are in an environment where you are working, maybe. So that is not happening at all. It's not happening.
Like they don't let them go because it's a disruption to productivity.
They will not let them go because it's a distraction to the working time.
Yeah.
Yes. So.
So Rethabile, oh sorry, Nthabeleng, I was just thinking, maybe I didn't let Rethabile, maybe I cut you off earlier. You were saying that they're finding it hard to make ends meet and they're not working. So like, what are they doing? Can you describe what's happening, what people are thinking about doing to try to make ends meet? Are they just gonna wait outside the factories for a job to open up? Are they looking into other methods of making money? Can you say anything about that?
Is it okay? Can you hear me?
Yes. No.
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead. Well, now you muted yourself again, so unmute. We can hear you. Not sure what happened there. Okay, Rethabile, yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So yes, even me, I even tried to go to the supermarket. So I went there to work at the supermarket, but since the lockdown, the owners are staying at South Africa, so the borders are closed. Even the supermarket now is closed, so it's very hard. So to get money for the families also, it's very difficult. It's very bad here at home. Yes.
Do you know anybody who's doing other kinds of work, maybe in a small shop, or are people just staying at home hoping for this to get better?
Some people are selling vegetables, fruits. Yes. Even though they don't get that much money, but something is there to put on the table for the family. Yes.
Does anybody else have any questions? I don't want to take up all the airspace here. Okay, go ahead. Unmute yourself there, Irina's husband.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Alex Kalanichenko. I'm a geography professor, and I'm very pleased to see this movie. It's a documentary. It's very impressive. Thank you very much for all participants. And while being in Canada, I had a chance to consult sustainable businesses in Canada, one of them being Mountain Equipment Co. We also have chains of supply going around the world. And I'd like just to ask if there are any examples in Lesotho of successful businesses which has different models of businesses and sustainability as a part of their business models. And if yes, is there any chance to connect these businesses with Canadian retailers and sustainable businesses to make some kind of partnerships just to promote better examples of working relations? And it would benefit local owners, it would benefit local workers, and it would benefit everyone actually in this kind of collaboration. Is it possible? Thanks.
That's a good question, Alex. And I think, part of the issue that I think we all think about that question, maybe not the specific like Canada, but how do you transfer those best practices, for example, from a Canadian retailer to that supplier in Lesotho? How does that get connected, right? And I think that's something that we grapple with. I don't know if anybody has comments on that. Anybody in Nthabeleng or Rethabile, any thoughts on that, or something to keep thinking about?
Can I comment? So I just wanted to say it was great that you made this movie. It still brings some voice to these people there. And I'm just thinking like more needs to be done. More films like that, just kind of showing what's happening, because there is no other ways to know, and film like a picture speaks 1,000 words. So it's really good, and maybe that can help, to the more people see it, the more people might decide to do something about it, either create this connection with Western companies or reach out to organizations or something. I'm not sure what solutions can come, but I'm just thinking, the more heads, the more brains into it, the more action, the better. So I'm hoping you're going to continue with that work and make more films and bring the voice of the people there to the world. So great job for doing that, seriously. Thanks.
Yeah,
and
I think thanks, Danielle. I think it's two tracks. On one track, you continue to work towards like partners on the ground working together, like in Nthabeleng, Rethabile, their organizations, the unions, the compliance people, the labor ministry, the national development company, the university, somehow working together to try to improve the working conditions for workers. At the same time, let's just be very pessimistic just for a sec and say that's the ideal, but maybe a little bit, it does come down to some big buyer throwing their weight around. And that is a little bit pessimistic, and it's not what one would want in the context of development or whatever. I don't know the right language to use, sorry, but like maybe it, like to Alex's point, I think transferring best practices, there might be some challenges. But I think just a buyer stepping in and committing to do more, like now in the context of COVID, some orders were there, right, that a bunch of buyers just canceled, and that leaves thousands of workers without money. It's like a lot of factories closing down, firing half the people, whatever. But if they just committed to paying out those orders, yeah, they'll suffer financially, but a hell of a lot less than those workers are going to. There are buyers that participate in programs like the ILO Better Work, and they are trying to do more in terms of monitoring compliance to make sure people actually fulfill those commitments. But it really needs to take root. They really need to sink their not teeth, but like not just the breezing through, the campaign that results in a quick reaction. Better Work was working in Lesotho while it was there, but then things fell apart when it left. Like, how do you really make that take hold? And they need to take ownership. They need to, like, if Mountain Equipment Co-op was to source from Lesotho, they need to not just slap a buyer code of conduct onto the wall. They need to not just send an auditor once a year to train on best practices. Like, they need to have someone on the ground, locally employed, who can respond to complaints or make unannounced visits on a regular basis to make sure they're being held accountable. But buyers aren't doing that. They really do have to take more responsibility in the supply chain. Deirdre, I feel like maybe I should turn to you for any comments, questions, thoughts, reactions to what people have said.
Yeah, I mean, just thinking about that question, and maybe you'll disagree with me, Kelly, but it seems specifically in the circumstances of Lesotho, we're often thinking about fairly small steps, aren't we, and sort of small achievements towards thinking about sustainability and coordination. So if you look at the report that we produced is available on the website just at the end of the last year. So, you know, prior to the pandemic, you're seeing a number of problems there without particular interest in how the labour standards are implemented. So we're seeing in some cases fairly elaborate codes, and we have a fairly elaborate labour code in the country. This isn't a problem about defining or formalising standards, but it's a question about how they're implemented, isn't it? One that we see everywhere. And I think the partners that we spoke to were aware of the problems around implementation. So clearly that the enduring problem of very poorly resourced labour inspectorates, but combined with really sort of poor coordination, I think, among the relevant government departments, the foreign investors, the buyers, even in aligning private initiatives with public standards and the enforcement of both of them, and making sure that all of the actors involved are really coordinating their activities. So what we saw was this the lack of coordination. We did see interest and awareness. So the Mr. Price Group, for example, the retailer based in South Africa, was an enthusiastic partner of the project, and I think they were certainly aware of the kind of challenges of making sure that this formal code could be implemented, and perhaps there could be some synergy between the activities of private and public actors in ways that would reinforce the work of the Labour Inspectorate. But I think with COVID, what we're seeing is just a sort of an intensification of the problems that we had already seen, isn't it? And this is a very, very sad and difficult situation. If we think about problems of enforcement, they're just becoming more intense, aren't we? When we think about how to respond to COVID in terms of health and safety, even as we heard Nthabeleng say, so we're seeing similar problems that are just emerging in just these incredible challenges. We've seen work-family problems just being that we saw in the film, and they're particular concern to workers in Lesotho and in the factories that we spoke to, are just becoming more and more intense. And so, so I think the awareness is there about what needs to be done, but I don't know that I feel that progress is easy or rapid. I'm not sure that that's a very positive story. Maybe Kelly would want to add more.
I don't disagree with you, and that I think falls into that first track around that partners should work together. In that track is also that small changes have been made. Like, yes, the unions are fragmented, and there were like 7 unions when I was doing my research there, but then they eventually merged into IDUL, which is like a much bigger. But then there was another like split, right? And Rethabile knows well about this. She was like caught up in all of that. There was another split. Wait, it's Rethabile on WhatsApp. Oh, okay. Do you have to go, Rethabile? Do you want to say anything else? I know your daughter has the flu. You said, I didn't realize that. Are you still there? I think because it's getting dark in Maseru and she has a small kid. I think she sent the kid outside to play, but the kid needs to come in. It totally makes sense. But Rethabile, can you hear me? She might not be there. She might be having, that might have wrapped up her data as well. Let me just say it's fine, no problem. So yeah, the unions, they did, oh yeah, Rethabile, do you want to say anything else before you sign off? Just have to unmute. Rethabile, can you hear me? Yeah, go ahead. You have to go?
I can't hear you, Ella.
Oh, you can't hear me? Can anybody else hear me? Okay. Do you have to go?
Okay, bye-bye.
All right. I texted her. I said, no problem.
I think people think that the session is ending.
Okay, and she's gone. So the point I'm trying to make is the union are still better off than they were before, even though there's this typical like slight unraveling. Like if you think of the actual word better work, is it better than it was before? Yes, like men and women receive training on gender equality, conflict resolution, which helps with budgeting at home. So the relations at home are slightly better, as we know. Like there are these incremental changes. I just think like, and I sent a link to the full report because we do make these practical recommendations. That even, for example, that the labor inspectorate should be better funded. We you know, that's not the first time that that's been mentioned. Is like, where does that funding come from? The government hinges on exports. I mean, the clothing industry is the biggest private employer in the country. If buyers were sort of saying, you need to put this pressure on, or we're taking our business, I think some money would show up in the labor inspector. The buyers themselves could do that. So it was like, one is more on the incremental improvements and stakeholder capacity track, and the other one is on just making more accountability from the people that are doing business in the country. Yeah, so I don't disagree with you, Deirdre. I think that is the important part, and the incremental steps really make I think some difference. The session is supposed to wrap up in 5 minutes. Does anybody have any other questions or comments or observations? Daniela?
Yeah, I'm just thinking because of the weather conditions there that the agricultural industry might thrive as well, or even better than the clothing industry, and maybe some advertising, to the Western investors about it might help. I'm just wondering. I'm just guessing because if in winter it's 20 degrees, so I'm just trying to think that for most of the year they have good conditions for agricultural work, and that seems like better environment.
Well, and Nthabeleng can comment on that, but from the little I know about the history of Lesotho, I think that land, the territorial boundary was kind of like brought in well, maybe our geographer knows something about that, so that the quality, like the arable land was not really, like it was all in South Africa. It was all outside those borders. So I think, and it's also highest altitude in all of Africa. So you've got a lot of like mountainous highlands, like not very, so while like I don't think that a shift to sort of like agriculture becomes like the next best solution, but it is a country that used to exist, like people who survived on subsistence farming. So there is that, but in terms of a supply chain on that side, I don't know. And Nthabeleng, do you have any comments on that, or maybe Alex?
Yes, I think that's probably what the country is trying to drive towards. But like you were saying, well, our arable land is really very limited. I think maybe it's about just 30%, 25 or 30% of the whole country. It's just arable land. The other 70% or even more, it's just mountains and all that. So agriculture is very, I don't know, it won't be that big, but at the moment, the government is really encouraging people to invest in agriculture, to come up with ways to make their own food and all that. And